becoming more uh, resolved, more, comfortable to take care of.
We can able to solve our problems very easily also.
Very rightly said. We are able to look into, the first thing is we are like able to look into it. We are able to take an observation of it. That is the most important thing. Instead of getting into disharmony, we are able to look at our living in a very, very meticulous way, with a lot of subtle points, with a lot of, activity into each one of our thoughts. We are able to view them very nicely. We are able to uh, take proper response accordingly with respect to those aspects. So I can see, I can see Dr. Shekhar Pandeyji. Namaste. Namaste, Mr. Parekh.
Namaste.
How are you?
I am fine.
And exams are coming up.
Yes, yes.
So how does it relate to your day-to-day living with exams uh, coming up, and then with all the online educational mode?
Online exam is very good, but the marks which I want to achieve, that I can't get it in the MCQ format, because when we write the paragraph, when we write whole content, the teacher give marks maximum they want to give. But in MCQ, if I have take the wrong, I have choose the wrong option, we will not get that marks. So that is a default.
I think you're quite right in this regard, that where MCQs are concerned, you have to be very precise and exact in your answers. So this some way or the other, maybe that a child who's able to express many of the proposals, many of the points, many of the topics in a better way, is at loss where MCQ is concerned, because you have to just look into the aspect and accordingly answer. So,
Ma'am, can I ask a question?
Please go ahead.
I am only the participant, or any more participants are there?
There are many participants, beta.
Yes, yes.
And many are joined on YouTube as well.
And there are plenty on YouTube as well. We are going to take up some of the very genuine aspects which are related to the students today.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes. So you can put up your questions, your queries with Arjun Bhaiya, as many as you like to. Okay. So welcome, Arjun. I can see you. You've already joined.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. And students are waiting for you.
Yes, we can we can start.
Right. So, dear friends, a very warm welcome to all. And since, as we were discussing it with one of our student, okay, Parik, Shashank, a while ago we were discussing the online studies and the online exam mode, and whether the MCQ style of examination is really what the students desire, and how much of pressure does it put on them, and how to take care of all that. So we were just having a word regarding a discussion regarding the same. So with these words, I welcome everyone to this Wednesday evening session, and we have Arjun with us. He's going to be your resource person for the day, and taking up very many aspects and proposals related to our students who are keenly waiting to listen to Arjun. So namaste to everyone and a warm welcome. And I'll hand over the session to Arjun so that we can have a nice discussion regarding the student issues. Yes, Arjun, over to you, please.
Yeah. I'm just trying to, I think the access is not there for the PPT.
Okay. So Parikshit Bhaiya, I think we can help out in this regard.
Try again, Arjunji.
I'll try again. Yes, now I think it is. Is it working?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Can you put it in presentation form, please?
Yes.
Yeah, now perfect. Yes.
Okay. So in today's session, we'll talk about harmony in the self, and um, if there's anything else also which we want to discuss, which is related to that, about our real issues and uh, things that we are facing in our day-to-day life, then we can connect them with this and try to see how they are related and how we can handle those situations. So we always like to start from here just to remind ourselves that whatever we are doing is for happiness and prosperity, and that is what we all aspire for. That is a basic aspiration of all of us, and for that, the program for fulfillment of that aspiration of being in continuous happiness and prosperity is by means of understanding the harmony and living in harmony at all the four levels. And we can do this by a process of self exploration where we are verifying a proposal on the basis of our natural acceptance, and then getting our own conclusions from there. And if we don't know, then we just keep exploring till the time that we know, till the time that we feel like we know something, rather than trying to just live with certain assumptions which we have not verified, because it's not so comfortable to live with assumptions which we have not um, you know understood, which we've not verified on our own through our natural acceptance. So this is uh, about the human being as coexistence of self and body. And there was one hand raised, so we can take that before we start. Can unmute before we start. You want to share something or discuss?
Yes, there's one child, uh, Miss P. Baranika. Miss Baranika, you can just unmute, Peter. Maybe she got disconnected. Uh, I think, Arjun, we can continue. If she joins in, we'll again be able to request her to communicate.
Or in the chat also, you can write if there's
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. So maybe I can see Sharad Bhaiya saying that there's a request that exam related and exam stress related discussions uh, by the students, the faculties have put in this request. So maybe the students would be able to put up their questions, and we'll be able to take up some of the questions related to the exams and related stress. Nice.
Okay, we'll connect. Actually, anything can be connected with our real issues, because overall, if we see, those issues are just coming from some gaps in our understanding, which when we fill, then we realize that the issues which we've made in our mind as big issues are actually no issue at all. So uh, sometimes we are making things up in our mind which are actually not part of the reality. Like if we just look at the content of our imagination, then we'll see how much of it is something which we want and how much of it is something which we don't want to have. And therefore we can start observing what is happening in the imagination, and then purifying that so that we have less of stress, and eventually we have no stress, and we slowly start uh, cleaning up the content of our imagination. So we can relate it with this also. We'll talk specifically about certain issues. If you have any question also, we can discuss like that also. So before we start, if there's any question about this stress, then we can, like any particular issue, like why this thing is happening, or what is the exact issue as such. Okay, maybe we'll take it after we just go through this a little bit. So if we look at the human being, then we can see that we are a coexistence of self and body. That means we have kind of uh, two parts to a human being. One is the body, which we can see, that is a material unit, and the other is the self, which is a consciousness unit, which we don't see like that, but all the activities, I mean, of whatever you're describing about the stress and all that, are also taking place in the self, and the impact is happening on the body as well. So, in terms of the needs of the self is the one who wants to be happy all the time. The body is just like something which is a physiochemical thing, which is, I mean, like it's a material unit. It is fulfilled with physiochemical things. So I'm just going through this quickly because like we had this discussion a little bit earlier also. So that's why this chart is kept uh, already in front of everyone. So what we are saying is that the body is different from the self. The self has different kinds of needs. The body has different kinds of needs. The self wants happiness and all the 9 feelings, whereas the body wants physical facility like food, shelter, clothes. So all that is for protecting and rightly utilizing the body. If you see all the physical facilities, whatever we have, the maximum that they can do is make the body feel comfortable. Like if we have a conducive environment like temperature and all that, then the body feels comfortable. If we have enough food to eat such that we are not going hungry, we are eating 2 or 3 times a day, and we are like, we have enough food to eat, and we have the clothes also for rightly protecting the body from the weather. If it's hot weather, then we wear different clothes. If it's cold weather, then we wear different clothes with the view of protecting the body from the weather. So that way, the body, if you see, physical facility is needed for the body. And that's all that is needed actually, if you see. But sometimes we tend to confuse the needs of the body and the needs of the self, and then we assume that we need a lot more for the body. So when we really explore this, then we see that all the self wants is happiness, and all the body needs is food, clothing, shelter, and a few things like that, physical facilities. So in time, when we look in time, as in over a period of time, we can start observing this, that everything that the self wants, all the needs of the self, of all the feelings, are continuous. Like there should not be any break in those feelings. Otherwise, we feel unhappy. If there's a slight feeling of disrespect, or there's a slight feeling of, like how you're saying, stress or something like that, then it starts to, um, you know, disrupt that happiness from within us. So that's why we say that the needs of the self are continuous. There should not be any break for even a moment. Otherwise, we feel unhappy. Whereas the needs of the body are temporary. You need them from time to time. Like you need food from time to time. You don't need food all the time. Similarly, you need all your physical facilities. Like there's something temporary about them where you need them only from time to time. Whereas you're in the self, you need the happiness and all the feelings you need continuously. And in quantity, if we see, then food can have a quantity, clothes can have a quantity. We can quantify it in terms of some kind of unit like kgs or liters or quintals, or these kind of units can be used. Quantitative units can be used to represent how much quantity we have of those. But when we look at respect and when we look at trust and such things, then we can't talk about them in kgs or liters or something, because they're not quantitative, they are qualitative in nature. So this is also a major difference between the two. So even though it's qualitative, we want it all the time. So it is continuous and it is qualitative. And when we look at how we can get this happiness and continuous happiness, then it is possible through right understanding and right feeling. And when we look at how we can get the physical facilities, I mean, what it is fulfilled by, as in, if we use certain physiochemical things like certain chemical compounds, food is everything is chemistry based, right? So all of them, what we're eating and what we're anything in the physical material, any material is a kind of chemistry, right? Even if we see metals, non-metals, our clothing, our house, everything is made of some or the other materials. So those are all physiochemical things. So the needs of the self are fulfilled by right understanding. The needs of the self being the 9 feelings, happiness at the root and everything around it. And the needs of the body are fulfilled by physiochemical things. And then next we see that when we look at our activities happening in the self, then the activities are certain kinds of desires are going on, thoughts are going on, we have expectations, all that is going on. So at every moment we can see that something or the other is happening. Either we are thinking about something, or there is something happening, some kind of activity which is always happening in the self. A lot of it is happening in the mind. The mind is a part of the self, which we'll see. And something or the other is going on that we can observe. Once we start observing it, then we realize that yes, it's going on all the time. Whereas in the body, the activities are happening from time to time. Like eating or walking or whatever activities are happening, those are happening from time to time. And there are gaps between the activities. Whereas in the self, the activities have no gaps in between, they're continuous. So that's why in the next thing it says in time that they're continuous for the self and temporary for the ones happening in the body. And next we see the response in the sense, uh, what is the response of the self? Knowing, assuming, recognizing, and fulfilling, which means the self has the potential for knowing before assuming, and after that recognizing and fulfilling. Like when we look at anything which we are thinking also, we can assume something and based on that get certain thoughts, or we can know something and on that basis assume and recognize and fulfill. So any assumption which is coming on the basis of knowing, that will be a very definite assumption, and any assumption which is coming without knowing, that will be indefinite because our assumptions may keep changing. And when we see the body is only recognizing and fulfilling. So that means whatever food is given or whatever is any physiochemical thing is given, that will have a direct response based on the kind of material it is, based on the kind of properties it has, and so on. So like suppose you eat some kind of food, suppose you eat something which is not to be eaten, like suppose you eat a direct stone or something, or a metal piece, then obviously the body will have a response which is unpleasant. There'll be some some discomfort in the body, because the body simply recognizes and fulfills whatever it comes across. So if it comes across a material which it cannot digest, then it cannot digest it. If it comes across a material which is good for the body, healthy for the body, then it makes the body healthier. If we eat something which is not healthy for the body, then the body becomes unhealthy. So the body simply recognizes and fulfills whatever is given in front of it. Whereas when we look at the self, it's not simply recognizing and fulfilling. Before that, there is possibility of assuming something before it recognizes and fulfills. It's based on that assuming which it recognizes and fulfills. Or it can be on the basis of knowing, where you something which you know, which you are 100% sure about, which you have not assumed, which is not influenced by something which you've heard or something which other people are doing or any of these things. It's something which you know. So uh, there is a possibility for knowing and then assuming also in the self, which is not there in the body. So now when we see these differences, then we try to understand what we can do by knowing this. And now we can relate it with what was being asked about stress also. That first we look at the things happening in the self. There is imagination going on, as in there is a lot of um, combination of this desires, thoughts, expectations, which is constantly running in our imagination. So this can be observed if you try to observe it. If you're not looking for it, you may not find it all the time. It might look like you have thoughts from time to time, or it might look like uh, there's nothing much happening over there. But as you focus more and observe it more, you draw your awareness towards what is happening there, then you realize that all the expectations are coming from your thoughts, and your thoughts are coming from your desires. And those desires are linked with your image of the world and what you want to do and what you think you should do, and so many things. So all this is coming into your desire, and then on that basis you have thoughts, and on that basis you have assumptions, expectations, and that thing keeps happening in your imagination continuously. So when we're talking about stress, then imagine what would happen if your desire is to do something, and thoughts are also kind of aligned with that desire. But then suppose you have another desire which is conflicting with your first desire. Then you get thoughts from this desire also, and you get thoughts from the other desire also. And if they're both in conflict, then you're juggling between two kinds of sets of thoughts, which um, which leads to more and more conflict within, because it's like you are having thoughts from one desire which you want to fulfill, and you're also having another desire which is totally opposite of the first desire, and then you have thoughts related to that also. And now you have all of this going on in your imagination, and it might be two or three conflicting desires which are leading to two or three different sets of thoughts, and those all might conflict with each other. So if they're conflicting with each other, then obviously it will lead to unhappiness, and that can show up as stress also. It can show up as depression also. It can show up as anything actually. So rather than focusing on the stress exactly, we can try to look at what our desires are first, and then see if we've got any of the desires conflicting with each other. Like, I'll give you one example. Uh, suppose I'm a musician, right? And I want to become famous also, suppose. And suppose I'm also a very shy person. Then I have two or three desires. I have one desire of, say, that I want to become famous. But then I also have these tendencies of being a shy person and being something else. So these desires are all, these things will all conflict with each other, because the thing that I want will not happen unless I can overcome that shyness. Or same way with the stress we can look at. Suppose I want to do very well in the exam and get a job which pays a lot, right? Suppose I have this kind of a desire. Then all my thoughts will be related to that. And suppose I also have another desire that um, I don't like studying because I like some other thing. I like, say, playing basketball or something like that. So then I'll want to, do this also and do that also. And now I have a conflict of desires where I have two different desires which are not working together, which are not helping me to get to where I want to get in terms of like my happiness and all that. So I'm just kind of confused. I become a person who has two different desires which are conflicting, and then I'm not able to resolve within. So the key is to make a list of these desires and see which ones are conflicting, and then try to understand which ones you want to actually pursue and which ones you can give up. And this is a process which can take some time also. I mean, initially it might look easy to give up something which you don't want, but once you focus more on what you actually want, then automatically it becomes easier to give up the one which you don't want. Because anyway, if you don't want it, then why spend time thinking about those things, and your whole efforts get scattered. So that's what happens with stress also, that we are we are saying yes to something inside, but we also are saying no. As in, we are it's like if you have a conversation with someone and somebody says, will you do this for me, and you're feeling that you don't want to do it actually, but then you still say yes to him, then what happens? The same kind of thing happens, right? That you feel that you actually don't want to do it, but you're saying yes. So this is what stress is, right? When we are doing something which we don't want to do, but then you're doing it for some reason because you have a desire which is conflicting with the other desire of not doing it. So they both clash, and then that causes disharmony within. So our imagination is what is driving our behavior and our work, everything outside. Imagination is happening inside, but then the consequence of that shows up in our behavior, and then it shows up in our work also. Because based on our imagination, we get certain tendencies of behavior also, and we do certain work also outside. Like we choose our job and our work and all based on the content of our imagination, based on all the things put together. On all the things put together, I mean all the sources of where the imagination is being coming from. So where is the imagination actually coming from, we have to see. Is it coming from outside or within? Is it coming from our natural acceptance, or is it coming from our preconditioning, or is it coming from sensation? So these are the three sources of where our imagination can come from. One is the preconditioning, means assumptions or ideas which we might have from before which we have not verified. Like for example, we might have some kind of preconditioning that um, if I don't do well in the exam, then I cannot get a good job, something like that. Or I might have a preconditioning that if I do very well in my exam, then job will never be a problem. So I can have so many kinds of preconditioning, right? Which I have not verified, but I've assumed, or I've assumed based on the current things happening in the society, or I've assumed based on something or the other, right? So that is a preconditioning. So is our content of imagination getting inputs from here, or is it from sensation, or is it from natural acceptance, which is something which is what is universal and which is innate to us? Is it coming from there, or is it coming from preconditioning or sensation? If you have doubt about the terms, we can discuss also what exactly natural acceptance means, what preconditioning means, what sensation means. It can be discussed if you want. I mean, we have discussed it earlier, but then if there's any doubt on these terms also, we can still discuss, because that is important um, to understand this whole thing. So if anyone wants to um, bring up anything, we can discuss about the exam or about stress or whatever else. Any other students who want to? I think students are not there on this one.
Hello, Arjun. Can I talk?
Sure.
Yes, exams are actually starting day after tomorrow. So as a faculty, what I need to tell, actually, they are writing the university exam for the first year. First years, actually, the exams were supposed to be held very early because due to the lockdown, it has got postponed in Kerala, and it was on April. But now offline exams are starting on this Friday. So suddenly the dates came 2 weeks before. What to talk to the students? No, they're writing the university. Still now they were in the schools. So that tension is there with them. What as a faculty I need to tell to them?
Like in regard to that stress and all, or with
They are
relation to
stressed
something?
also. They are having that stress also because they didn't expect a offline exam so fast. So that is also and they actually the second semester started. This exam is based on the first semester, so it is like a they have to come back and study the first semester. So all those this is because of the lockdown and the COVID situation, these has come. Otherwise the first semester semester ends and they have the exams. No, the first semester got ended. The exams were supposed to be on April, but suddenly because of the COVID situations, the college got the exams got postponed, the offline exams, and then the second semester started from May first week, and then June I think 1 week before that time itself, university has told the exams will be held. When the situation improves, we will give 10 days of holidays. So then before 10 days, they announced the first semester exams. So that stress is there with them.
Okay. So maybe there is a thing that there can be a strong assumption that if the exam doesn't go well, then they will have a problem with jobs and they will have a problem in the future. Maybe do they have that assumption?
I don't know. But suddenly, actually, they forgot the whole thing. No, so again they have to study once more from the scratch. So that is there. So they require actually more time, but the university will not give more time. So anyway, anyhow, they have to actually the passing marks and all have reduced. It was 40, so now it is reduced to 28. So that advantage they have, but the timings 3 hours before it was 100 marks 3-hour exam. Now they have reduced to 2 hours 70 marks, 100 marks question, but they need to write only 70 marks. So all those things are there, but still actually 12th till in Kerala State Board, 11th and 12th is little easier. They can pass very fast. But when it comes to engineering, the syllabus is tough, and the valuation is also not that. What they write, they have to write the correct answer to the question. Then only marks are put. So the chances of scoring marks is not easier. And particularly when it comes to first year, the transition phase, they find it a little difficult. Once after 1 year, when they write 2 exams, it gets 2 semester exams, it become okay. But the initial is little tough for them.
Okay. So basically few things, I think, like one of them is about the thing that it is important, the exam is important, but it is not to be over made, I mean, something which we have made in our mind to be too important also. That it is important, but it is not so important that we have to take it so seriously. Of course, we have to do our best in the exam. That is anyway something which we would do. But when we look at the bigger picture, then we see that it's not as big as we've made it to be. Like even for 10th board and 12th board also, there's a lot of hype created about the importance that if you don't do well in this exam, then something will happen in the future. Something bad might happen. You might not get a good job and all that. So there's a lot of hype about this thing that if you don't do well in the exam, then you'll struggle in the future. So that's one thing which can be just said that, everybody has some of the other skills, and that eventually comes out anyway. So although you should definitely work towards doing your best on it, at the same time, you shouldn't have a fear of not doing well or fear of anything as such, because anything in our whole life, if we see, we have a scope to do some stuff from our side. Like we can, if there's an exam, then we can put in a lot of effort into studying. That is for sure. But apart from that, a lot of time sometimes goes in worrying about what will happen, worrying about results, worrying about the future. So all that doesn't really help to focus. So if we just focus on what needs to be done and also realize that it is not such an important thing, it's important, but it's not so important also, then we can focus also much better, and then we can also um, have a much better mood without all this stress and all that, because we'll be putting in more effort into the study, but then, and we'll get better results also, but then our focus will not be on results, and our focus will not be so much on like worrying about the future. Like many times when we are just thinking about studying or thinking about the next step, then we are in that stress. But if we are actually focusing on the content of the subjects and studying those subjects, then if you're really engrossed in the subject, then you can't deviate into stress. You can deviate into stress only when you're not fully focused on the subject, when you're worrying about things which may happen in the future. So any kind of worrying or any kind of fear of the future is all a mind-made thing. It's not something which is part of the reality. So whenever we do that, it's just limiting our own progress, limiting our own focus also on the studies, and also limiting our, I mean, like disrupting the harmony also within us. So these things we can try to communicate, I think.
Yeah, mainly the sessions were in online, no? So that also many students found it difficult. That was a main thing. And one of the student, actually, she told like, I'm finding it very difficult. When the exams were nearing, she got stressed. I feel like quitting the engineering, like that. She was talking. We made her like understand, no need to worry, because they feel that the fear of till now, till 12th, it is a little easier. They won't fail in a subject. But once they come to engineering, failures can come, no? So that fear is with them. But we know that failing in one subject, it just doesn't matter much. But for them, first time they might face a failure. So that is a thing that keeps that comes in the mind, I think, because from the seniors they might come to know, no, they can fail in the one paper or like that. So that might be the reason.
But even failing in a subject also is also over evaluated as something which is a big thing, which is not such a big thing.
Which is not such a big thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that it is nice to fail. And like even in when I was in college, I never failed any subject. I did quite fine in the exams and all that. But then I'm just saying that if we are thinking, making it too much of a thing, then it causes our own stress. Right? Like if we are making it up in our mind only, like suppose there's a pleasant situation where there are two people in the same situation. One person might think of that situation as a very bad situation, and the other person might look at that situation in a totally different way. So it's all about how you look at that situation also. So when you look at this situation that your exams are preponed and now you have to study quickly and finish it. So then one person can look at it as like this, that I have less time to study and I might not do well and I might have lots of issues with the future and all that. And another person might look at it like this, that um, I'll have more free time to do something which I want to do after the exams. So I'll fully focus on this couple of days and do the exams well. And then I'll be able to do something else which I also want to do. So somebody can take it this way, somebody else can take it that way, that, it's such a bad situation where the exams are so early, and that itself will keep happening in the imagination there. Because that repetitive thought of worrying and the thought of the thing that the wrong thing has happened and why did this happen to me and why was I born in this year where COVID came and then this exam got preponed, and so much of all these linkages of these kind of thoughts can disrupt our own focus on the exam also, on the subject also, and disrupt our mood also, like cause that disharmony within. So I think the key is to like accept whichever situation is coming and then do the best you can in that situation, and then look at the situation in a way where you can utilize it in the best way possible. Like even with, like we can give an example of say you have 20 rupees or something, and you have to eat food for that full day with 20 rupees and you're outside somewhere, then you have a choice of how to spend that 20 rupees, right? You have less. I mean, 20 rupees is a low amount for spending for a whole day's food, but then you you might have some you make the best use of it, is what I'm saying. So in the same way, when you have less time for preparing for the exam, then you make the best use of it and focus on the subject rather than trying to focus on the result that you're supposed to get, and the cribbing about having less time and the situation is not right and all that, because that doesn't help you also, it doesn't help anyone else also. It causes uh, disharmony within also, and it causes not such a good result also in the exam.
Oh, okay, Arjun. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening, Arjun. Dr. Pramod Goel.
Good evening.
Good evening. Actually, some of my students from Adesh Institute of Medical Sciences and Research, Bhatinda, are also attending this program on YouTube. And I have these two questions from the student. One is from the Akshit Mittal, MBBS student, first year. He is asking that we know the values. Actually, we have already we are teaching this subject to the students. So he has written, we know the values, still we face practicing it in our daily life difficult. How to inculcate this learning in our daily life effectively?
Okay, so that's a very good observation, that once we know something theoretically, then it may not come into practice, right?
Yes.
So for that, what do we do? So one thing which we should be aware of is that it can be a very slow process because we have a lot of backlog of different kinds of assumptions, different kinds of things going on, and different kinds of tendencies, also habits which we have formed over time. So to change any of those things, a lot of effort has to go in. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. So that is one thing that, one thing is to just realize that it can be a slow process. Otherwise, whoever had any kind of idea, it would have become a reality for them. But it doesn't happen because everybody is at different levels of their actual understanding. By understanding, I'm not saying knowing the theory of all this, but I'm saying um, getting to the level where it is a part of us, as a part of our understanding rather than a concept. Because till the time it's just a concept in our mind, till that time it cannot have a major impact. It can have a minor impact, but not a major impact, because it's just like an idea. Like you read a book, also you get motivated for a few days, and then after that it fizzles out. Then again you're back to the same place. So same with this also, that if you just hear this concept once, then you feel, wow, it's such a nice concept and it can be used. But then when you go for living your real life, then you realize that they have not these as concepts or as ideas or as theory. It doesn't translate into your understanding, your reality of your understanding. So for that, how to make it happen is through various methods. Like you can use awareness of trying to be aware of what is happening in your imagination at every moment, and your awareness of what your desires are, what your thoughts are, where those desires are coming from, what is the uh, motivation for those desires, why do you want to get those desires, and try to uncover all these things and then work on each one of these things, and try to have awareness about each one of these things, so that when the situations come up which are comfortable or uncomfortable, then we can take decisions much more easily. Like suppose we are having this thing that we are not able to focus on studies. Let's just take examples because we're talking about exams. So suppose we have this thing where we're not able to study properly because our mind is getting deviated, we are thinking about future, we are worrying, we're doing all this stuff. Then how do we bring it back to this thing? So when we look at that also, it's the same thing, that we have a desire of doing well in the exam, and we also have a desire of focusing here at this subject at this moment. So even though these desires are not conflicting with each other, they are coming in the same time frame, right? So in the same time frame, you can't do so much where you're thinking about this also, and you're thinking about this also, and then you're trying to focus also, and you're getting a phone call also. So you can't do all of this very efficiently if you're distracted like this. So it would have to be done with proper time slotting of the the time, and then whenever your focus shifts to something else, then try to be aware of that shift, and then try to bring your focus back to where it should be. So like this, even if it's exam or if it's not exam, whatever it may be, whenever we are getting any thought which we don't want to have, or anything which is not aligned with the desires coming from our natural acceptance, then at that moment, if we are able to catch it, we try to catch it. Initially it may not be immediately, but like initially we'll catch it a little later, maybe few hours later or few days later also. But try to catch it, and then try to uh, you know uh, examine that logically, that you can examine logically. And then next time when something happens, then again you try to analyze it, be aware of it, and then analyze it, and then keep doing this over a period of time. And then you'll realize that you're getting more and more in line with what you want to do, and you'll be less and less distracted with other things, and you'll be more and more motivated also to do what you want to do, and you'll have more and more focus also, more and more concentration also, and um, with all these things you'll be able to explore also all the content of right understanding. If you apply this to all the content of right understanding and looking at our relationships also very closely and being aware of every moment in those also, then we'll be very kind of receptive to see all the changes happening and all the decisions that we are making, all the thoughts. We'll be able to see all this more clearly, and therefore our actions will also be much more in line with what we want. So through awareness it can be done, but then we should know that it may be a slow process, and initially you can even keep some kind of hourly alarm or something to see if you're aware of what is going on, or if you've just taken on a tangent and you're thinking something else which you don't want to think. So like this you can just practice this kind of a exercise. Maybe you
Like,
can start with something every hour to just check what is happening in your imagination, and check if whatever is happening is naturally acceptable to you or not. And if it is not, then you just see what is happening, just observe, and then slowly as time goes you may see more and more things which are naturally acceptable, and slowly the things which you don't want to have in your imagination will start exiting.
okay. Like what I understood, like his question was, matlab he is finding it difficult to inculcate these values in his daily life. So one thing you told that it's not a simple process. Basically, he should like concentrate more on this thing. He can concentrate by becoming aware, being aware of his imagination, and then seeing.
Maybe it's not a complex process, it's simple only, but it can take time, and the
Yes.
amount of time it takes depends from person to person. So that we should know. That's all. It is simple because, like, if we ask you right now that can you be aware of what you're thinking right now, then sometimes people may say that when you ask like this, it feels like nothing is going on, right? If you think of what is going on right now, if I just ask, we can ask this question to all the people who are here also, that just take 5 to 10 seconds and just try to become aware of what is happening in your imagination right now. So in this 5 or 10 seconds, if we ask people what was happening in their imagination, many people may say that nothing happened because suddenly it went blank, or suddenly nothing was coming in that. But actually that is not blank. That is something which we are not able to observe directly. So rather than trying to look at it like this, it is easier to, like, when we are fully involved in something, then when we start looking at it from time to time, then we will be able to see it more easily. Like suppose we are studying and our focus is shifting here and there, then if we make it a point to be aware of that while that is happening, at say every half an hour we put an alarm, or every hour we put an alarm to see if we are going on track or not, then it will be easier to pick up what is happening in the imagination. It may be easier to pick up what's happening in the thoughts, in the where those thoughts are coming from, the desires, all that. Slowly more and more depth comes in that, and as that happens more and more, then it becomes an automatic process which we can have inside us. And when we have that kind of a thing going on more and more often, then obviously we will waste less time also, and we will our harmony within also will be maintained more easily, because all that stress and all which is coming from lack of even knowing what's going on in the imagination. Because if we know what is going on, then it is easier to be aware of it and either accept it or, um, you know, work on something to improve it.
Okay. One fun example, one was coming in my mind also. For this thing, uh, like his question was, he is not able to inculcate this learning in his daily life effectively because it is a slow process and he should keep on repeating. One example was coming in my mind, like vaccination. We say that a single dose is not sufficient. The single dose will produce some antibodies, but we need booster dose, and booster dose reaction is always greater than the first dose. So that's the same thing, like the when we get this content first time, we get some antibodies, but when we hear to this content again and again and again, the subsequent response are greater than the first response.
Yes, we can say that. And at the same time, also we can say that only listening again and again without exploring on our own also may not lead to anything. Because just by hearing the thing again and again, we may, I mean, some different points may click at different times based on our situation, based on our receptivity at that time, and all that. So, based on all those things, different points may strike us at different times. So, in that way, we get that boost, how you're saying. But also, we should be aware of the fact that after hearing it so many times, also, then until we practice that awareness and explore these proposals on our own properly, till that point, it will not really translate into understanding for us. It will still be a concept only in our mind. So we want to transition from this content as being a concept or being an idea or being a theory which we have just kept in our memory. We want to shift from there to a place where it comes into our understanding, where it becomes a part of our uh, our being as such, where
Okay,
it
I
will
think we can
have
relate again it with the example, like same example. We say active immunity is better than the passive immunity. Means active means, like you said, just listening is not enough. We should experience it also. So like same thing is like active immunity and passive immunity. We say active
true.
is more helpful for the body. Means where body is actually involved. We can relate with this, like
Yes,
just
we
listening
can.
and practicing.
Yes, and practicing also, like we don't have to wait for some experience to happen. We can practice this on a regular basis, just like how we put effort into other things, right? Other activities and all. If we know that this is going to lead to our happiness, then obviously we would be more motivated to put in effort into this also, no? So in
Yes.
that way, when we put effort into being aware, just being aware, it is not so difficult also, but sometimes we may not understand how it can help us, and therefore we may not be motivated to try this. But if we just try this for say a week, then we can start seeing that something is happening over 1 or 2 weeks. We can start seeing that you're able to see your feelings also, you're able to see what is happening inside your mind also. So that way it's like you're able to control also whatever is going on, rather than something where it is just happening and you have no control, then you have stress, you have depression, you can't do anything about it. So the fact is that yourself can be totally is totally in your control. And if you are aware of that, then the mind itself takes the lead and does everything based on the outside, based on temptation, based on sensation, you know, based on preconditioning, without exploring things. So if you go into the self, like apart from the mind, when you go into the self, you ask your natural acceptance, then you reach a place where all the answers are there also, and all the things which are happening are also kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but you reach a different state where all of this becomes much easier, where you don't have to struggle with any of this. Rather, you're just observing and then you're seeing everything. That's all. So it's with awareness itself. Like with awareness, we try to practice awareness and get to try to figure out what our desires are. Try to figure out. You can easily do this thing of writing all your desires on a sheet of paper, and then trying to classify those desires and see if they're motivated by sensation or preconditioning or natural acceptance. That can be one exercise, and that is very effective because that helps us to document or write down the thing for ourselves, that okay, I have these desires, these are coming from here, these are coming from here, these are coming from here, and so on. And then after that we can also see if there are different desires which are conflicting with each other, and if they are conflicting, then we have to make a proper decision about how we can handle that thing, so that uh, we try to cut out the ones which we don't want. So even this, on paper it might look very fast, but then it takes some amount of time and awareness and effort to resolve all of them. So it can be done, and that is what will lead to more of our happiness also, because when we have all these conflicts of desires also, it's leading to unhappiness. When we have all the desires coming from natural acceptance, and based on those desires when we are getting thoughts, then all the thoughts will be harmonious and all the content of our imagination will be harmonious and we'll be happy. So that's all that we want to shift from. We want to shift from all those, that big clutter of so many desires um, which may not even make sense to us also, but we have taken them. And so many things which are going on in our imagination which we don't want, but it's happening. So if you're not aware of them, then they will keep happening. And the consequence of that as stress or depression will keep showing up. So to avoid that, we just want to be aware of it and then try to kind of clean up, like how you have regular maintenance of everything, right? You clean the floor also. If you don't clean the floor for few years, then there'll be so many cobwebs and so many things there. So then you have to put in more effort, right, to clean up. So in the same way, if your imagination has so many unresolved desires and so many unresolved thoughts, conflicting desires, thoughts, all that, if it's there, then it may take some time to clean up everything. But it is possible to do that. And when we do that, then even when we start doing it, as we start uh, getting aware of our desires also that are conflicting also, that also leads to more happiness. So we can immediately see some kind of changes taking place once we start being aware. So it's very effective actually if we try doing this.
Okay, thank you. I think already time is over. There was one more question by another student, but I think there might be some other hands raised. So please take that, if
Okay.
or otherwise time is over. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Thank you. So if there's any other question, we'll take. Otherwise, we'll close because time is up, I think.
I have actually another question by another student. Can I just say
Okay,
that?
we can take it. We can take.
Okay. This question is from the Jyotsna. She is from 2020 batch MBBS student, first year, Adesh Medical College. She is saying that I would like to ask, we always say that peace is our highest happiness, and happiness is not always permanent. So how can people create peace in their life as there is nothing permanent? So how do we make harmony with ourselves? Thank you, sir.
Okay, so like when we are talking about happiness, we are not talking about excitement, which is the temporary kind of happiness which we get from pleasure or which we get from, um, some burst of happiness. We're not talking about that kind of a thing. When we are talking about happiness, we are just talking about aligning where we are and what we want to be. If these two are aligned, like suppose in terms of your thoughts, in terms of your imagination, suppose everything happening in your imagination is naturally acceptable to you, then you can see clearly that you will be in harmony, right? So how would that happen? I mean, what would that mean? That would mean that your what you are is exactly the same as what you want to be. There's no conflict between those two. If there's no conflict, then you're in that state of happiness, which you can call as peace also. The name doesn't matter really, but we're calling it happiness just to, you can call it anything, bliss or peace or any of these things, but uh, it's a state where we are able to, like, what we are and what we really want to be is totally aligned. And when they are not aligned, then there is a conflict, and that conflict causes unhappiness. So in our practical life, what we see that sometimes these two are aligned and sometimes these two are not aligned. So when they're aligned, we feel happy. When they're not aligned, we feel unhappy. And therefore, we keep having shift between happiness and unhappiness because sometimes they get aligned, sometimes they get misaligned. So that's why it happens like that. So what was the next part of the question?
Uh, it was like she asked, we always say that peace is our highest happiness and happiness is not always permanent. So how can people create peace in their life as there is nothing permanent? And how to make harmony with ourselves? So one point that's very clearly you have explained that we should know the difference between happiness and excitement. Actually, most of the time we confuse between this happiness and excitement. That very well you have explained.
Right, and excitement can never be permanent. That is true. So if you're talking, like, I think just the terms are different, that's all. But I think she means the same thing, that if you're trying to get happiness from anywhere outside, like suppose you go for a movie, you become happy for some time, then you go for something else, you go with some friends, you get happy for some time. So those are kinds of excitement where you can never have that permanently because um, they are not coming from within you. So anything which is coming from outside cannot be really permanent. So in that sense, that is true, completely true, that any form of excitement will lead to some burst of pleasure, and then that pleasure will also possibly turn into pain because the absence of that pleasure, the absence of that excitement might lead to pain, right? Like suppose um, you have you've done very well in the exam and you've got such a great job and all that. Suppose you have all that going on, and then suddenly something happens and you lose that job. Then suddenly, if that was something which happened, like if you're getting excited with that thing, then it can immediately lead to pain also, or anything, even in terms of any like let's take in terms of food also, or going to a restaurant, that when we eat something which is very tasty, then it leads to that excitement where we feel very happy at that moment, but then very quickly its impact might come on the body, and then we feel that uh, you know it was not so useful also to eat that. Or same way with some relationships also, it may happen that we quickly go into a relationship, and then initially there's a lot of excitement, and then slowly it leads to pain also. So like that, anything which is coming from outside, which is without the right understanding, that can easily lead to this cycle of pleasure and pain, which is all to do with excitement. So excitement can never be permanent. That is true. And this other point about the peace or whatever, that peace we are just calling happiness. That's all. So our terms are just a little bit different. But the meaning is the same, that we are looking at happiness as a state where we are stable, where we don't have neither excitement nor depression or any of these kind of feelings, because we're in a stable state of happiness where whatever happens, we're not perturbed or we're not affected negatively or positively. We are just in one state which is constant, and we are in harmony basically. So how to be in harmony, when you ask, that is by trying to look at your natural acceptance and trying to align all your imagination with your natural acceptance. So once you do that, then slowly and slowly, the percentage of time that you become happy, that you feel happy, not the excitement kind of happiness, but the real kind of happiness, that increases. And when you're into excitement, then it is also a kind of enslavement, because you are dependent on all those sensations, on all those activities, all those things to get that excitement. And without that, then you don't get it, then you feel that you're not getting it, and therefore you become unhappy. So these two can be looked at very differently. Excitement is a totally different thing, and happiness is a totally different thing. Yeah, and we can
Yeah.
discuss more about details
Yes.
later.
Yeah, I think this very clearly you have explained. Actually, basically, these two things we can understand now, difference between excitement and happiness. Then this point is very clear. This is very important point to
Cannot be
understand.
permanent.
Yes, no, excitement cannot be permanent. That will be always temporary, because that we get from the some outer things, sensations or. Yes, thank you.
And the weird thing with this whole thing of sensation and all that is that we become dependent on it, and then because of that, when we get it, we feel excited, and when we don't get it, we're always kind of craving that excitement, craving that sensation. So then it's like we are getting enslaved, right? It's like we are getting bound by that.
It's okay. Thank you. Thank you, Arjun. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice. That
Thank you.
was
So we'll
good.
close now.
Yes, that was a good discussion. And the students who are with us and listening to the same, they must have also taken a lot of takeaways with them. So this is fine. So Arjun, shall we call it a day now and meet again next Wednesday?
Sure.
Nice. Thank you, Arjun. And
Yes.
thank you, dear participants, for taking out time to be present on Wednesday evening and being a part and actively participating in the discussion. That's really good. Thank you so much. And we'll meet again next Wednesday. But Friday is yet another day on which we are going to talk on holistic health. So do join that session on Friday as well in the evening at 7:30. So with this, I thank everyone, and I thank Arjun also for taking out time and giving appropriate response to all the queries and taking the proposals to each
Thank
other.
you. Thank you, everyone. And
Thank you, Arjun.
Thank you.
And Parikshit Bhaiya,
Nice,
namaste to
nice.
everyone.
Namaste, everyone. Namaste.
Namaste.